Hi everyone, 13 on your side's Julia Gorman here. A big story we've been following this week. The Jackson, Michigan couple, Christy and Paul Akeo, who were arrested in the airport down in Cancun a few weeks ago. They're accused of fraud over a timeshare dispute, and they were put in a maximum security prison. We know there's been a ton of interest in this developing story, so this is a combination of interviews and stories so far. First, here's our Lauren Baker's report from Wednesday, March 26th. She breaks down details of the case.
Lindsay Hull says her family's life has been turned upside down the past 3 weeks.
It's opened my eyes to, a situation that you never really think would happen to you.
Her parents, mom Christy Akeo and her stepdad Paul Akeo, went to Mexico for a vacation thinking nothing of it, until they were detained in the Cancun airport for fraud charges. The source of those charges, a timeshare dispute.
They were very loyal members to Palace Resorts. They loved going there. They loved going on their vacation. It was their favorite place to be.
Hull says her parents say Palace Resorts, which is now Palace Company, was not providing benefits with their membership, which they had for years. So they disputed the more than $100,000 in charges with American Express.
And ultimately, after months and months of, collecting evidence and providing sufficient enough evidence, American Express sided with my parents and awarded them their money back.
She says her mom even worked with a timeshare lawyer to help with the situation. Thinking that everything was over and they were no longer members, the couple went back to Mexico at least once before they were arrested in the airport. Now in a maximum prison, Hull says the company is asking for $250,000 in a signed agreement, which says the couple will make a public Facebook post apologizing to the company, will pay $1 million each if they talk about the situation, and
nowhere on the document does it say if we were to pay the money, if we were to go through with signing this document, would it even secure their release?
Hull says her family gets one phone call only from her mom a day for 5 minutes at random times of the day.
I think there's a lot of things that she isn't telling us about the conditions of where they're staying. Obviously, we're very scared.
Since blowing up on Facebook, she says the U.S. Embassy and Consulate have spoken to her, offering help with their situation, and other leaders have reached out as well. U.S. Representative Tom Barrett even made a post saying action is being taken. And with no trial date set for their return, Hull says she and her family will stop at nothing to bring her parents home.
We're going to get them home. We're not going to stop until they're safely home back in the United States.
Now that you've got that look at the story, here are two in-depth interviews with people immediately involved in the case. First, Christy's daughter, Paul's stepdaughter, Lindsay Hull. She's been pivotal in spreading the word about their story.
So just kind of walk me through what has the last 21 days been like for you, and how did this all start?
The last 21 days have been life-changing, honestly. It's opened my eyes to, a situation that you never really think would happen to you. Let me just get my cat out of the video, Yeah, it opened my eyes to a situation that you would never think. You think you hear about it in the movies, and you hear about stories and books and things like that, and you're like, wow, that would be something would be insane to go through. And then we woke up one day and I was at a hair appointment, and I got a call from my stepdad that they were being detained in the Cancun airport and arrested over charges of fraud. And obviously at that point we had no idea what the next 21 days were going to look like, let alone the next 2 hours when we got that phone call. But it's been a very long 3 weeks, to say the least.
I have to ask, how did this all start? There's some confusion as to when this started. It didn't start at the 21 days ago. It started maybe like 2 years ago at this point, 3 years?
Yep. So 2 or 3 years ago, my parents went through a contract dispute issue with Palace Resorts. They're now known as the Palace Company. And obviously this is hard for me to know exactly what the details of this are, because it was not my situation. It was my parents. And, until they're out of prison and are able to share their story themselves, I have to go off of just my understanding. But what I do know is around 2 to 3 years ago, there started to be issues with this contract membership that they had with Palace Resorts. And there was a breach of contract by Palace Resorts. So that allowed my mom and Paul to go to American Express and dispute charges that Palace Resorts had made because they were not receiving the goods and services any longer from this membership that they had since they had the breach of contract. So this was over a span of, gosh, I don't know, months of them going back and forth with American Express to be able to provide sufficient enough evidence that they, were wronged by Palace Resorts and they deserve their money back. And ultimately, after a lot of back and forth, months and months of, collecting evidence and providing sufficient enough evidence, American Express sided with my parents and awarded them their money back. That was also due to the fact that Palace Resorts was not able to provide sufficient enough evidence. So that is kind of where this whole thing started. And obviously, again, I'm not my parents. I don't have all of the direct access to all of those, those things. But that is essentially where we're at. And then they got to Cancun on March 4th. They were going through customs as they got to the airport, and they were arrested.
And I don't know if you can answer this question because obviously this is not your situation. When you say that they were not getting the benefits, is it that like they were still going to the resort and the things that they were promised weren't given to them? Or, what were maybe some of the things that they said, oh, we're supposed to be getting this and we're not getting this, which led to them saying, we're going to have to go ahead and dispute these charges, if you can answer.
Yeah, so I believe there was just certain things that the contract allowed them to have that Palace Resorts was supposed to honor that they weren't honoring, that they had taken away from my parents.
So they would like go to the resort and wouldn't get something that was part of the contract that they signed.
Basically, yes, from our
Okay.
understanding, yep.
And when this is all happening, were they going to the resort often, or was it like they went down one time, then came back up and were not seeing those benefits, or they went multiple times during 2021 or when they were there?
They went many, many times for years. They were very loyal members to Palace Resorts. They loved going there. They loved going on their vacation. It was their favorite place to be. But then once these contract disputes started happening, they didn't feel safe going there anymore. So probably, I can't for sure say the last time they went there, but it's been at least 2 or 3 years since they have been to any Palace Resort.
And that was my next question was them going back to Cancun this last time. They were not going back to that resort.
No, nope. So from the time that this dispute ended, the other important thing to share is that when they were going through the initial, disputes, my mom hired a timeshare lawyer to go through this with her to help her with all the charges and everything, because she knew this was a very tricky situation and it's not easy, to get your money back from these things. So she made sure she was doing everything correctly. She hired the timeshare lawyer to do it with her. And, she thought that this was a done, they hired the lawyer. She got, they were able to get their money back from her providing the correct evidence. She's no longer in the membership with Palace Resorts, and they had been back to Mexico, I want to say, at least once, maybe if not 3 times since this has ended. And then, just unfortunately this one time they went, there was a warrant filed for them out of nowhere. So.
And that was my question, because seeing obviously some of the comments of people saying, why would they go back? So they went back this last time, one, not being the first time, going back since the dispute ended, but
correct.
Under the impression that whatever had happened with Palace Resorts was already done and everything was fine.
Yep.
And did they receive like confirmation from the resort or from the lawyer saying that the dispute was over?
I'm not sure if they have like an official written document, but yeah, I don't know. I can't say to that for sure.
Okay, yeah, no worries. And then my next question was in regards to the money. That was also all part that they're asking for what they were supposed to pay and more, it sounds like. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so what's really frustrating about the situation in its entirety is that American Express has sided with my parents based on the sufficient evidence that they were, that they were able to provide. And Palace Resorts was not able to provide sufficient enough evidence to prove their case. which is, you know, a perfect example that this is retaliation against my parents. And you know, the over time, the disputes that they were working with American Express on, I don't have the exact number. It was between 116 and 117,000 because it was a handful of charges combined. So even if, you know, they feel entitled to this money, which they're not, but even if they were, it couldn't be more than that amount of money, correct? So the fact that I mentioned in my Facebook post, they're asking us for $250,000 right now is extortion, is what it is, point blank. So, you know, their only option is to, you know, work on an agreement with us in this way, because they're asking for more money than what they would even be allowed to in the first place if they were allowed any of that money. And they know they can't do that in the court system, so they have to do it through extortion.
When you say they're asking for money, is it the government that's asking for
It is
the
Palace
money?
Resorts themselves.
Palace Resort. So
Yes.
just so I'm understanding, they were arrested by Mexican authorities and are being held in a jail in Mexico. But Palace Resorts is saying if you pay us $250,000 and sign an NDA, you'll be let go. Is that what?
That's essentially what's happening. However, obviously we're not going to agree to extortion. That's illegal. And then also this NDA that they want them to sign is, it's not really even an NDA. It's a document that they want them to sign, that they're disguising as an NDA to call it an NDA. An NDA is an agreement, and there's no agreement in this document whatsoever. They want my parents to put up a Facebook post, which this is already long gone because this has been, you know, exposed all over Facebook at this point. But they want my parents to put up a Facebook post publicly apologizing to them and claiming full responsibility for everything that has happened. They also stated in this agreement that when they get back to the US, if they were to ever speak about this, or if anybody on their behalf was ever to speak about it, my parents would each owe them $1 million for every time it was brought up. And the best part about the whole thing is that nowhere on the document does it say if we were, even if we wanted to, if we were to pay the money, if we were to go through with signing this document, would it even secure their release?
What's your reaction to that? They're asking for a lot of money, and nowhere does it say that they will be released if you were to decide to pay that.
I think it's really telling. I think it shows that we have them in a place that they didn't expect to be in. We have exposed a lot of their very corrupt behavior, and you know, they have put us through 3 weeks of absolute hell. And you know, now it's time for us to stand up and use our voice against them. And you're coming at us with these demands that are absolutely comical. You know, this is direct proof of extortion. You're retaliating, you're using blackmail over a timeshare dispute. You had Interpol involved to arrest a couple from the United States, a middle-class normal couple, over a timeshare dispute. It's absolutely absurd, and I don't understand how they think that this is okay. And unfortunately, I think that things like this have been going on a long time in their business, and I think because people haven't been able to use their voice and expose this and use their platforms the way we have been so lucky to have these last 24 hours, they've never been exposed, and we're finally doing that to them. And you don't get to treat people like this. It doesn't matter who you are. And you know, we're going to continue using our voices to stand up for what's right. You don't get to treat people like this and demand things like this from people, and just expect people to worship the ground that you walk on. It doesn't work like that. So you know, we're gonna continue spreading word about the Palace Company, Palace Resorts. We're going to continue tagging them. We're going to continue tagging our national government. You guys obviously helping us spread this story. Our national media outlets will hopefully pick up on this soon, and we're not giving up. This is very unjust. It's very unfair. My parents are in a very, very, very scary situation. And their inability to work with us, or they really took advantage of our good faith and trying to work with them. It just proves it's point blank corruption and extortion at this point. And we're not going to stop. We're going to continue speaking out. We're going to get them home. We're not going to stop until they're safely home back in the United States.
And talk about your parents. Have you been able to talk to them? How are they doing where they're staying?
Yeah, so we have not spoken to my stepdad Paul one time in the 3 weeks that he's been there. We've not been allowed to speak to him. We've had no contact. My mom, we usually get a phone call a day, averaging around 5 minutes. It's scary. You'll hear just someone in the background, usually a prison guard, come up to her and tell her that her time's up and she has to hang up the phone. And those calls come at any point. You never know when you're going to get another one, if you're going to get another call. There's no way to for sure say. And it has limited our communication severely, which makes it extremely hard to try to communicate what's been going on, what this situation actually entails. And it has made it extremely difficult. I think there's a lot of things that she isn't telling us about the conditions of where they're staying, because now that I'm a mom, I have a very big understanding of wanting to protect your children from certain things, for obvious reasons. And I think it's a really telling thing to her character that she is not wanting to tell our brother, probably all of the things that are happening around her, to try to protect us. And obviously we're very scared. That's why we're doing all of this. We need to get them home safely. And I think it's much more horrific than what we'll ever understand, because we're not in her shoes, we're not in their shoes, and unless we were, we will never really know or understand.
And have you guys gotten a lawyer since all this has started?
Yep. So we hired legal representation down in Mexico, because we had to have lawyers that were able to practice law in Mexico. We have paid thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars towards legal representation. We're also at a point now where we've also hired U.S. representation as well. This is a very, very serious situation, and we need the help. We need all of the help that we can get, and using our media outlets, local, national, using our both local and national government representatives is going to be the way to do it. The power of social media is absolutely insane. We've already been seeing it in the last 24 hours. So I just continue to ask people, please continue to post and share and tag anybody that you wish, as far as local, national, media, and government. Please continue to tag Palace Resorts, call them out, hold them accountable for this. This is simply not okay. My parents are being imprisoned over a timeshare dispute. And there's just no words to describe how absolutely unjust that is.
And I wanted to ask about the reaction with social media. Has this helped progress the situation for your parents? Have there been
Significantly.
and talk about
Significantly.
that? What has happened since in the last
Um,
24 hours?
so I spoke in my Facebook post about how we have had very little help, if any, from the embassy and the consulate. And then last night we were able to have a phone call with them that was very helpful and very productive. And I think that that's a direct result of the community, of everyone watching this, whoever is going to see this, calling for us and making it a point to report that this is happening. And like I said, like, that is why we are so grateful and thankful for everyone that is helping, whether we know them or not, because it's starting to make a difference. Tom Barrett has made a post on his Facebook and his X account. I was able to talk to Sarah Leitner this morning, who is another representative, to listen to our story. And we just have to keep going. We have to keep this growing, and it's going to take hard work. And my brother and I can't do it alone. We tried for 3 weeks straight, hours upon hours upon hours with legal representation. And it goes to show how truly powerful the voices are of people and the number of voices that we're hearing. It's truly remarkable what we've done in 24 hours. And I can only hope that people are willing to help us continue that.
I wanted to ask about the news media outlets in Mexico. They obviously have written about your appearance. What's your reaction to what they were saying in their articles?
So the first thing is, I think it's really telling that Palace Resort's name is not listed anywhere in the articles. I think it's very telling that they claim that my parents are already officially charged, which is impossible because there hasn't even been a trial date set yet. I think it's very telling that they didn't mention anything about American Express siding with my parents and rewarding them their money back. And it's hard. It's just very hard because obviously people pick up on these media articles, and I'm responding to them and I'm saying, if you've hired legal representation for my parents and you've gotten, all the evidence from this case and you're posting on it based on that, please forward that information to me. But if you haven't done that, then you're taking information from an article that was written off of false information and is actually defaming our parents. And that's really, really important because it's not okay to defame and slander people on the internet when you don't have the actual full evidence of the case at hand. And the only way that people would be able to have the full evidence is if, like I said, they've hired the legal representation and been given the actual court documents like we have. Those are obviously documents that, at this time they can't be shared because of the severity of the situation and the safety of bringing our parents home. And like I said, when our parents are home, there is going to be much more of this story that will come out and a lot more evidence and a lot more truth. But until then, we need people to continue sharing the truth, continue being on our side. And I honestly just ask that people use common sense when they read those articles. Like I said, Palace Resort's name is not mentioned anywhere in the articles. They made no mention of American Express siding with my parents and rewarding their money back due to sufficient evidence being provided. I just, like I said, just use your common sense with things that, you choose to read on the internet.
And we're gonna have to be wrapping up soon, but my last two questions are: they've been in is it jail or prison?
They're in a maximum security prison.
Maximum security prison. For 21 days. One, some people are saying, why did you guys wait until 21 days to say something? What's your response to that? And then two, how much longer do they have to stay in prison?
So I think that's a really valid question, why we waited so long. I think it also goes to show the weight and the severity of how scared we were for their safety to speak out about this. Like I said, for those 3 weeks, my brother and I did everything that we could do out of good faith. We tried to work with their legal system. Again, have paid thousands upon thousands of dollars for legal representation. We got to a point where they just weren't willing to work with us. I mean, at one point they stopped responding to us for 8 days straight. We didn't hear any contact from Palace Resorts for 8 days straight. And it's a risk. And we got to the point where, like I said, we needed more help. My brother and I have done in that 3 weeks every single thing that we can do, from hours upon hours of translating every document from Spanish to English, because obviously everything is in Spanish that we get, working with our lawyers to try to work with Palace legal team, who is not very easy to work with. Obviously, they didn't respond to us for 8 days straight. We took down a private Facebook group, which is something that they were demanding. We made that happen. We're desperate for help. We need it big time. We need eyes on this. We need voices. And like I said, what our community around us has done has been nothing short of absolutely amazing. And my brother and I are so thankful. I cannot say that enough for everybody that is watching this. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Please don't quit. Please continue. We're relying on you guys. We are not going to quit. And as long as we are not, we just ask that you please continue with us.
And is there any word of how long they'll have to stay there, or have they given an indication that they could leave?
So as of right now, they are indefinitely in prison because, like I said earlier, that trial date has not even been set yet. So without a trial date being set, it time, I guess, will tell, and that's why it's crucial. We can't quit. We have to continue putting pressure on them to get them home.
Well, those are all my main questions. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you felt like you just wanted to mention real quick or was
Um,
important to the story?
yeah, I think it's really important and really telling. I don't know if I said this already. My stepdad is a Navy veteran. He served in the Navy for 21 years. And he currently works for the Michigan State Police, who is supporting us through this and working with us and trying to help us. And it's been very frustrating to, like I said, we've reached out to so many local and national government representatives at this point. And we're starting to hear from them, which is amazing. Like I said, that is the power of social media. That's what we need. But ultimately, we're allowing a foreign country to imprison a 21-year veteran right now who is innocent and also still, like I said, works for the Michigan State Police currently. So I just really want to make a point to say that my parents are good people. They're, like I said, we're a very normal middle class family. They're grandparents to my kids and my brother's baby, and that's the family is everything to them. Their friends are everything to them. Anybody who knows our parents can speak to who they are in their character. And like I said, we just have to keep sharing our truth and knowing that it will prevail. So.
And now you'll hear from the couple's attorney, John Manley. He explained potential motives for the case and a different way to handle the situation.
So we wanted to talk to you about what's happening to the Akios. We know that you're the attorney for them, at least here in the United States. From a legal perspective, can you kind of break down what's happening to them right now?
Sure. So, I mean, it's a sad story. In 2021, they were convinced at a sales presentation to buy a timeshare. It was also called a vacation package by a company called Palace Resorts. And in essence, they initially went down and enjoyed the resorts. They were convinced to buy into a bigger investment. And basically in 2021, the Akeos believed that they weren't getting what they were paid for, that they were making reservations, they were being canceled by Palace. And you're paying a lot of money and you're not getting what you pay for, and it's on your American Express card. It was on Paul's card. So they challenged the charges. And American Express agreed with them and refunded about $116,000. So and that they thought was the end of it. They actually hired a lawyer in Florida to help them with it. There was some back and forth, and it ended. And they'd been to Cancun several times since then, going to different resorts. In any event, on March 4th, they flew down to Cancun, and they were arrested at the airport. There was a video crew there, photographers, and they were initially held in detention. They were not. Nobody from the U.S. consulate was able to meet with them. They were denied counsel initially, and they were thrown in prison. And they're in Cerezo Cancun, which is a maximum security Mexican prison filled with the most disreputable people you can imagine who are alleged to have committed horrific crimes. Paul's a 21-year Navy vet and an employee of the Michigan State Police. He runs the physical plant. And Christy's a grandmother and a mom and a small businesswoman. She ran a cleaning company for years, and all because they challenged a credit card with American Express that they won, and that Christy posted about it on a Facebook page. where 8,000 other people who have issues with Palace's policies and the way they do business are on. So what happened is that Palace, the day before they arrived on March 3rd, made an Interpol red notice. And Interpol is an international clearinghouse where it says to other countries, hey, this person is wanted, right? So if they posted it at any time after 2021, the Michigan State police would have picked it up because they do annual suitability and criminal reviews for their employees. They clearly didn't want them to know. And and then they clearly wanted to tell the media down in Mexico, oh, they were wanted by Interpol. They weren't wanted by Interpol. Palace Resorts and the Mexican prosecutor's office put that together. So what's really disturbing about this case is that Palace Resorts is negotiating their release. Their Mexican lawyers, nor my office, is not dealing with a prosecutor's office, with law enforcement. They're dealing with representatives of the company. In fact, their general counsel called me today. And they won't release them from prison. And it's Palace's decision unless they do the following. One is initially they wanted $1.6 million, which of course they don't have. Now it's $250,000. They have to permanently get a Facebook page removed that's critical of Palace. They have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which is the most one-sided thing I've ever read, and I'd be happy to share it with you, that says that if they say anything about Palace Resorts, their experience in prison, anything negative, they have to pay Palace Resorts $1 million. If anybody in their family says it, if they report to law enforcement about it, they have to pay $1 million. Then they have to publicly apologize to Palace, saying this is all their fault, and post it on Facebook. This is all their fault, and Palace are great guys. It's a shakedown, and it's wrong. And they've been sitting in prison for 3 weeks until yesterday, until the family went public with this. Christy Akeo had been getting almost no food because she has serious seafood allergies. She carries an EpiPen that they took from her. All their personal items have been stolen. Their passports are missing, and they're sitting in a prison. Finally, the U.S. State Department was able to meet with them yesterday, and the conditions have improved marginally, thank God. And we're really grateful for the hard work the State Department's really recently put in. And I know they're in touch with the White House as well. That's where we stand. They're insisting that, you don't get out of jail unless you do exactly what a corporation wants. Pretty scary. And I would just tell all your viewers, think twice before you go to Mexico. And I hope the government and the senators and the local member of Congress has been very helpful to the family. He called him personally, and they're very grateful for that. And there's a lot of people praying for him. There's thousands of people online that have supported him and are praying for him. And Paul's a 21-year veteran of the U.S. military. And when I raised my hand and swore an oath, as a naval officer, one of the first thing I learned is we keep faith with our people, our veterans, and our country deserves to keep faith with them. He's done nothing wrong, nothing. And if they have an issue with the money, you file a lawsuit like every other corporation does. You could sue them in Mexico, you can sue them here. And I've made the offer to them that we'll raise the money and deposit $116,000 in an escrow account, and you can sue them here in the U.S. or in Mexico. And if you win, great. If you don't, then so be it. But they don't want to do that because they want their pound of flesh, and they want to silence two Americans who are just simply asserting their rights. Imagine if you can go to prison for a bad Yelp review. That's really what's happening here.
There are so many questions with the information that you just gave me. I think one of the clearest ones is, what's the motive behind this? Like you said, they're two middle class Michiganders just going on vacation. Why would they be targeted?
Well, number one, Christie's daughter was a leading was very public in the Nasser case and got a very large settlement. And it's public, and Christie was public about it. Christie did not get a settlement, but I frankly think they think the family has money. Um, my client's mother is not going to have her daughter, who was horrifically abused by Larry Nasser, pay her settlement money to some Mexican crackpots who are, running some timeshare operation. So I think that's one. Two, I suspect it's political, and three, I think they're really mad at Christie because she spoke up. When you're unfair to people, and if you look online about Palace, all I can tell you is what I've read. There's thousands of complaints about their sales practices, the way they do business, et cetera. There's positive stuff too, so I'm not going to misrepresent it. But there's a lot of people that are very unhappy with the way they do business. And if you sign a contract in Mexico, apparently you only have 5 days to cancel it. And apparently Palace, if you believe the reports online, has made it very difficult to cancel. So you have a lot of people who now have to pay huge monthly charges who feel taken advantage of, rightly or wrongly. And it doesn't really matter whether, if you simply because you express an opinion about a company, or you talk about your experience on how you challenge charges and talk about how they try to take advantage of you online, that's not a basis to go for criminal charges. It's a civil case. It would be a civil case in Mexico, and our Mexican attorneys are telling the Lemke's children, Mike and Christy, that this should be a civil case. That this to them seems corrupt. I know as a lawyer it's corrupt. People don't go to prison because you contest a hotel bill. They go to prison for contesting a hotel bill in North Korea or Russia, and now apparently Mexico. And the thing that's significant about places like North Korea and Russia, the State Department has a do not travel warning. That's the highest level to Americans saying you're in danger. And I really do think that the State Department should, as to Cancun and the state of Quintana Roo, where Cancun is, really have to put that up. It's not safe for Americans to travel there. If you have any questions about it, you can talk to the Aquino family.
Another question some people have is, how is this legal? How can a corporation say, okay, if you want to get out of prison, you have to pay us? Is it different in Mexico, or,
It's
why
not.
is
No, it's not. It's not legal there. The justice system there is totally compromised. The legitimate elements of the Mexican government have no control. The area is controlled by, it's widely reported the area is controlled by criminal gangs. The justice system is not just. It's totally one-sided and compromised. And, anybody who's ever been in Mexico and been pulled over by a police officer knows it's compromised, and it's a tragedy. My clients don't have any issue with the Mexican people or even the employees, most of the employees at the resort. They're good people. They have issues with the corporation and the way they run it, and the fact that they're being held in prison and will not be released unless they do precisely what some Mexican timeshare corporation run by billionaires says they're going to do. And that's wrong. And our government and every American ought to be disturbed that this happening. Thousands and thousands of Americans own real estate or timeshares, perhaps even a million or more in Mexico. And this is a troubling development that if you have a disagreement with them and you don't pay precisely what they want, when they want, or you challenge it on your American Express card, they're going to throw you in jail. Not good.
so how do you battle a situation like this? What do you as attorney do to kind of help, alleviate the situation and get these people back home?
Sure. Well, some of what I'm doing I can't discuss, but I can tell you what happened here is the family for 2 weeks tried very, very hard to resolve this without publicity because they didn't want to place their parents in danger. And they couldn't get any response from Palace. They had one hearing. They were forced to wear Palace slippers, Palace Resort slippers to the hearing in their jail garb. Palace Resort's lawyers and personnel were heckling them in the hearing and laughing at them. And the hearing was a joke. The judge didn't set a trial date. They don't, said essentially you're in prison for another 6 months. Palace, you get to build your case. What? I mean, we give we give people accused of horrendous crimes in this country, very serious crimes, um, bail all the time, and the same is true in Mexico. Then they ask to be held under house arrest in a hotel or someplace that they could agree with the prosecution on. Palace disagreed, didn't happen. So Palace is really controlling this. This is not a they're acting like this is some criminal case and the Mexican criminal authorities are exercising their judgment. It's a bunch of nonsense. This is Palace. Palace controls it, and they're basically putting him in jail until they pay him exactly and do exactly what they want. And like I said, that's disturbing. Um, so the first demand they had is to remove the Facebook page. Well, Christy and Paul don't control the Facebook page. This Facebook page had 8,000 members who were largely disgruntled with Palace, but because out of concern for the Achaeos, they pulled it down. And Palace said, if you pull the Facebook page down, we'll negotiate with you in good faith. And then they didn't hear from him for 10 days. And that's when they decided to go public. That their clear intent is to hold them indefinitely, to silence them, and to punish them for daring to speak up.
My last question is, where do we go from here? You know, you had said that there have been some changes made to their accommodations in prison. Is that the only update we have? And where do we go from here now?
The real update is Palace hasn't responded to my offer to say, look, we'll deposit the money so you can have access to it, and we'll go to a legitimate court and litigate this issue where you're not under the duress of being in prison unless you admit wrongdoing, et cetera. That's what communist countries did to American prisoners of war. That's what despots do. That's what criminals do. And they won't agree to it. And I think that tells you a lot. It tells you a lot about our confidence in what happened, and it tells you a lot about Palace and who they really are.
Those are all my main questions. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you feel like is important for people to know?
Yeah, the family would ask that everybody pray for Paul and Christy and pray for all Americans held in foreign prisons. I can't tell you what a nightmare this is for them, how bad the conditions are, and how worried their family is about them. And these are good Midwestern people who just went on vacation, and it's just a nightmare. So
Thank you so much for speaking with me today. I really appreciate it.
my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
This is a story we'll, of course, continue to follow closely. Until then, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.